of years later, they said, "Hey, did you know there's a community garden across from the West Side Neighborhood Park?" I said, "No, I've never seen it." So I inquired about it. I met the manager, and it turns out that the property is on LADWP property, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, who supplies power and water to Southern California. And looking into it a little further, the history of it, all of these edible gardens on LADW property was an initiative of a mayor by the name of Tom Bradley
Hmm.
40 years ago, if not longer. When he came into office, he saw DWP property being underutilized, and he thought it'd be good to grow food. So there are several gardens on LADWP property, and subsequent to that, you have a lot of commercial nurseries who rent space from LADWP. You will notice that they are on their property under transmission lines. So the manager was pretty elderly. He was up in age, and he had been managing the garden for years. And he said, "Hey, do you all want to take it over? I'm tired of it." So that's how I got involved with it. And we've been there for about 8 years, improving this garden. It was really out of compliance with DWP's regulations, far out of compliance. And tomorrow, people will be able to see before and after photos of what this garden looks like. And it's important that to people to know that we've gotten away from growing our own food because of the commercialism of the corporate culture and the whole thing about just the importance of making money, making profit, buying up thousands and 10,000s and hundreds of thousands of acres of land for commercial ventures to grow food on a massive scale, which I think is unfortunate because when you grow food on such a massive scale, you have to deal with the infrastructure, you have to deal with water, you have to deal with insects, you have to deal with so much stuff, harvesting it, and we've just gotten away from a more simple life. So I got involved with this garden.
And I remember meeting you around that time. I was still a commissioner for LADWP, and I have been visiting some of the community gardens through the LA Compost organization, which is a wonderful organization that teaches people how to compost and, bringing their compost to community, to farmers markets and such. And they got me involved in some community gardens, and I learned about this particular community garden in West Adams, and how much attention it needed. So I remember just like all the this is how all kind of comes together, I guess.
Yep.
Because then later on you and I became friends, and have been on the trenches and a few fights, in the community. But it's so nice to know that you are so involved with the community garden, and that is a place that every time I go there is so peaceful and it's so nice. And I want you to maybe talk a little bit about the the community that is part of the community garden, because in a moment in history where there's so much division of all sorts, in all colors and sizes, it's so refreshing to go to a place where everybody treat each other like family, and it feels at home, where everybody with there's a great diversity and people really work together. So if you can tell us a little bit about what the community garden is, who goes to the community garden, and the diversity that this community garden offers in West Adams.
Okay, yeah, when we took the garden over, so to speak, we got LA Community Garden Council involved because they are our fiscal agent. They pay our bills. And when I say fiscal agent, they have a nonprofit tax exemption from the IRS. And when we started getting involved with the garden, it was mainly brown people that were involved. There were a couple of black elders, and most of the people, I would say, were upper middle age and elders that were involved with the garden. Very few young people. There was very little diversity actually in the garden at that point from an ethnic standpoint. And from a generational standpoint, as I say, there were very few youth. And I would, there were no youth involved in the garden. So, subsequent to that many years ago, it's a lot, the diversity is much more varied now. It's much more intergenerational. That is one thing that we're trying to do is bring the power of youth, some young blood to this garden. So in the last, I'd say, year, there have been, I would say, at least 10 or 12, well, no, I'd say about 15 new people that are on the younger side. And the plots originally are very big plots. They're huge
Hmm.
plots to be a community garden. So we are pretty much downsizing most of the plots now because, one thing with some of the elders, like Mr. Forte, who lives around the corner, Mr. Forte turned about 94 about 2 weeks ago. And he is the most avid gardener on that that land. Out of everyone, even the younger people, they can't keep up with him. His plot is always spotless. It doesn't have weeds. It's planted year round. But now, recently, we told Mr. Forte, hey, Forte, if this is too much, downsize. So at this point, he is downsized to a half a plot because, we don't, he doesn't need that stress. He doesn't need to overwork himself. He was out there today in this heat working in that plot. And he was one of the few that were out there today. Um, so, it's a thing of sharing. We are going to open up another plot within the garden that can be more of a communal plot where we can invite the public and have it open maybe once or twice a month initially so the public can come in and learn how to grow. So
That's
we
amazing.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We are actually a LA compost hub. So we
Uh-huh.
got a grant from LA Compost that trickled down through the state of California, where we do accept food waste, vegetable food waste, and that's one thing that we're going to have tomorrow, about an hour and a half workshop on how to compost during Earth Day. And we have another plot that was recently released from an elder because it was just too much for him to handle. And we are going to divide that into three plots. So what happens now when we get a new person? Every new person starts out with a 4 by 8 foot plot.
Hmm.
And then it's like being in school. You're in kindergarten, and now you're going to graduate to the first grade, second grade, and third grade. So
That's how good.
they,
That's a good way to put it for people
right.
that don't know anything about community gardens.
Right. So they will graduate to a third size plot. And then that's about it. I don't think we're going to go to half size anymore because even half size is really big. So it's a great place. I mean, people grow everything from garlic to onions to leeks to bok choy to loquats to grapes to strawberries to kale to lettuce to beets to carrots to gosh, tomatoes, potatoes, you name it, it's in that garden.
That's beautiful. And for those of you that are just getting to the live stream, I'm speaking with Steven Meeks. He has been very involved in a community garden here in West Adams, and he's telling us a little bit about the intel of what happens. How do you get your plot? How do you how you can be part of this particular community garden? But this community garden is all over the city. And I guess my next question to you is, how, if they're not in West Adams, how they can find out, but also, if or like LA Compost is a really good place. I have been trying to get them also in a live stream to so that they can
Mhm.
tell us more about their work. But what is the organization, or for people that are watching the live stream right now? how can they find out where there's their nearest community garden in their community?
Well, the fortunate thing is LA Community Garden Council helps to manage 40 plus gardens around LA County.
Hmm.
So that would be the first thing, to go to LA Community Garden Council. But they do not manage all the community gardens. There are a lot of other gardens that they don't manage that are out there. So that's one way. And if people want to contact us, they can contact us through LA Community Garden Council, or go to Instagram and look up the Good Earth Community Garden. So that's a couple of ways there. But there are gardens all over the city. And if there's not a garden in a close proximity to your geographic area, and there's some vacant land that possibly can be used, look into it and see how one can be established.
Awesome. So tell me something, Steven, because I also been in your home, and you kind of have like a mini garden in your home too, in the front yard.
It's a
Is
jungle.
it is a little bit of a jungle, which I love. Um, what inspired you to get involved in the community garden, and why you love so much, greenery around? Like I'm a avid hiker. I go on road trips. I'm a very outdoorsy person. But I know a lot of outdoorsy people that don't have gardens. What inspired you to start to start gardening with the community garden and to have your own garden at home?
Okay, one way I can possibly say, what's the saying? Practice what you preach.
Yes.
That's part of the saying. And I will say, I know a few friends, a few female friends, and they are some of the most heavy advocates of leading a plant-based vegetarian lifestyle,
Right.
but they have no clue how to plant a peanut, a carrot. And it's been very difficult trying to get these three ladies in particular involved. They rather just, buy their food, but it's so important for us to learn, to know how to grow food. It is so vital to do that. Now, um, I guess it's akin to, as a start, being in the Boy Scouts, because
I
being
didn't
in
know
the
you were a Boy Scout.
Oh, you didn't even know I was a Cub Scout. I was a Cub Scout.
I love that.
And, being in the Boy Scouts, you go camping, you go hiking. And my last year, I think, of the Boy Scouts, I would ride with a few friends of mine. We would ride the bus, or our parents would take us. I don't, but we would go to Elysian Park on Saturdays and trees and do stuff like that. And then when I moved to my grandmother's place, she had an acre of land. I started taking a magazine called Mother Earth News, and started learning about composting toilets, methane digesters, growing your own food, living off the land. And that is just part of the impetus of me doing it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe the Boy Scouts. I don't know. And I will say, as a child, my parents didn't grow any food. My mother was always out at night looking for snails and slugs, killing those things that were eating her plants when she would water at night. And I guess it's just in my blood. It is very relaxing to be in that garden. We had an elder recently, about a year ago. She and her husband had been in the garden for a long time, and he passed away. And she was gone for a long time. She went to Mexico for a year. So we thought she abandoned her plot, because if you're
Mhm.
not there for a year, you let it grow the weeds, so on and so on. Well, it's abandoned. So when we said we were going to take the plot back, she said, "Oh, no, please don't take it back, because I would come out here when my husband and I were going through stuff, and I would just sit in this garden, and it would help me relieve stress and be at peace." And
Mhm.
so She kept the plot for a while, but about a year later, she just said it's time to give it up. So it is a place of solitude. I will say that years ago I worked with a food co-op with an organization called Black Women's United Front in a different city, and it was so enjoyable being part of a food co-op where
Mhm.
we would get all this organic food in, and we never dealt with meat. It was always grains, nuts, vegetables, fruits, and stuff like that. And I will say, I worked in a meat packing plant once for Safeway while I was in high school, and the energy of being around all those dead animals and dead carcasses compared to being around, say, if you were at the wholesale produce market downtown, completely different energy.
100%. I was just watching this video about bees and beekeepers and all these studies about bees and how as they, do their make their beehive and take the pollen, make their beehive, there's a certain energy frequency that is there that helps your brain. So who wouldn't thought like bees?
Yeah, my daughter, my daughter is kind of scared of bees, but I can go out in my yard, and right now when it's cooling down, they'll be out there. The bees will be right in my face,
Yeah,
but they don't want me. They want the pollen.
yeah,
That's what they want. I brush by them all the time. They are not even thinking about stinging me because they want to go back to that pollen. And one thing about bees, when people think of bees, we only think of honeybees, and hopefully we will get a hive at the garden soon. But we don't often think about other bees, little tiny bees that you can barely see, bees that dart in the ground and build their nest in the ground, California native bees. And there's a wonderful person here named Crystal Hickman, and she deals with California native bees, and that's what
yeah,
she does. She photographs them, and so bees are a wonderful thing. In my yard, oh, I have edible stuff all in my front yard, but
yeah,
it's not for us to eat. It's for the bees, the moths, the beetles, the even birds. Birds can pollinate flowers. And there's even one mammal that can pollinate a flower. And most people don't know what it is, but it's a bat. A bat may get pollen on it when it goes to one plant and pollinate something else. So my yard is full of hummingbirds and bees and flies and all that stuff.
absolutely. And they're so important for our food chain, all of those animals. And I want to shift the conversation a little bit about food sovereignty. Earlier, you mentioned something about how we all need to learn how to grow our own food. That is important. And the community garden is a good way to practice. You have other people, nobody's judging you. There's not a
Hmm.
competition. You don't need to sell your veggies or
That's right.
anything like
That's
that.
right.
It can be just for yourself. But I think it's so important to bring the conversation about healthy access to food in our community. Also, our right to have healthy food, and in so many places we don't have a place where we can walk to that has fresh, vegetables or fresh food products. That is super important, and especially in more environmental justice communities, so low income communities of color even more so. You don't really see a lot of access to this type of food, or to like fresh food. So it's so important. So I wanted to ask you, what's your take on community gardens as a way to access healthy food?
Well, if we were to go to countries that still find it important to have marketplaces where you go every day to buy your food, no matter whether it's meat or no matter what it is. We've gotten so far away from that because are depending on this corporate culture of this capitalistic thing of just making profit and making money, as opposed to having farmers type markets scattered throughout the
Mm-hmm.
radius of a community that we can go to on Saturdays or go to on Sundays or whatever day. Now it's a thing. Hey, let's just go to the supermarket to buy this food, and it's unfortunate that we've got to get back to a more simpler way of life. Um, for that, because people now, we don't know how to grow food. So what do? We depend on supermarkets, big grocery stores. Well, what if there's not a grocery store that has quality produce in your neighborhood? Then you either have to go outside of your neighborhood, and if, like I say, if you don't know how to grow food, you're not going to grow it at home.
Mhm.
Um, maybe like solar energy, you can have huge solar farms like up in the Mojave and Eastern
Right.
Sierra that a few big energy companies are doing. But as opposed to that, what if people had solar panels, several in a block where they can be shared by all the neighbors, or they can
Yeah.
be on each home? So
Community
why not?
solar. Yep.
Why not community gardens, small gardens that people can go and grow and harvest food like that, and with that type of concept? It just needs to be done.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I also believe that there is something very healing about learning growing food, vegetables, be having a garden. That especially a community garden, that is something very communal. It keeps you close to your neighbors, and kind of like you can kind of check what they're doing. They teach you tricks.
That's right.
You teach them tricks. But then the other part to this is that we're in a world where mass production is happening all the time. I mean, we kind of know where our tomatoes come from, but like knowing that your tomato is coming from your plot, or from your neighbor's plot, or from your community garden, is a whole other different way to you know to approach healthy food. And
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
yeah, please go ahead.
No, yeah, the advent of industrialization, my personal opinion about living in modern society, and when you have millions of people that live together, then you have to provide infrastructure for all these millions of people, no matter what the infrastructure is. And the industrialization of food production, I think, is just out of control,
Yeah.
because you have, even in the DFW, Dallas Fort Worth area, you have a new, and they probably have several, but there's a new grower. They grow lettuce, and they grow greens, but they do it all inside a warehouse with artificial lighting. It's probably with permaculture, with in aquaponics. And while that can be done, I mean, we have just gotten away from living natural lives because of this modern convenience society of just manufacture this, manufacture that, and everything is done on such a large scale. And so much of that food, uh, it just does not taste very well. It has it's horrible.
Yes, it's far from being tasty. What do you think is the next thing for community gardens here in Los Angeles? What would you like to see? I mean, you're very involved in this particular community garden, but how can we strengthen that work and make it more accessible for more Angelenos?
Well, I think one thing, I think from either a legislative standpoint with the state, or an ordinance standpoint from a municipal government, they are the ones that need to say something about, okay, here's a vacant lot. Just because you have a vacant lot, you don't have to put a building on it. You
Mm.
know, you don't have to pave it over. Use it for a community garden. Grow food. Especially teach children how to grow food, like something I think you're working on. I mean, look at all this, the LAUSD and other school districts playgrounds, and not even the
Yes.
playground. The whole yard is just asphalt. It's asphalt and or concrete, creating all this heat, and
Heat island effect. Yeah.
it's just ridiculous. So I think lawmakers need to look at what they can do. Like Marlton Square over in Baldwin Hills. It's unfortunate, that is going to be developed, And I hope that part of that is going to have green space
Right.
for either California native flora to attract the fauna, and or have a space there that people can grow food and learn how to grow food, especially the
Yeah.
children.
I know that in New York there was an effort to make the rooftops of buildings, gardens for the people in the building,
Hmm.
so that and for I think for the community too, so that people could. I mean, because in New York there's really no space; it's very dense. So urban farming, they need to think about urban farming in a whole other different level, and it's
Yeah.
also cold and it snows and things like that. So it's a whole other way and in California where we have abundance of sun, and the weather is so nice most of the times. I mean, this year
Hmm.
we had a very wet year, which has been
Hmm.
very exciting to see. We don't have any excuse to not really promote more community gardens and more healthy eating. Not long ago, also a neighbor of ours, fought the city because he grow food in the parlets, in the outside. When
Hmm.
you're walking on the street and the sidewalk.
Oh, the
You know,
Parkway.
the parkway. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. He grew, and it was interesting to me to see that he got a ticket at first. That he had to go fight it in the city, and it's incredible to me that this is not like a normal practice, that people can just, like, I mean, if you live here and it's open, like, why wouldn't you have a bed in the front yard? It's kind of like your home is a little bit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a good thing with the city of Los Angeles that Florence Nishida uh, is the point person who really helped to get that ordinance changed about planting on your parkway. And for those that don't know, the parkway is the green space between the sidewalk and the curb. And that ordinance was changed several years ago. And that was actually before I got involved with the Good Earth Community Garden. And but other cities need to do that, and not be so stringent on just because someone plants greens or tomatoes in their front yard. That's their space. They should be able to grow what they want. But when you have a lot of homeowners associations and so on that will say, ah, no, you're not going to do that, we're going to fine you, that's against our rules.
It's a whole other ball game. I
Yeah.
do want to bring a comment that I see here coming from Facebook, and it's Kurt saying that he lives in a street with 42 homes in his block, and in the past year, 5 families are making our street self-supporting. So 2 families have started hydroponic greenhouses, and including him. 3 families started chicken farms. So all of the families on the street don't have to go to the grocery store for products or eggs and chickens. So
That's
I think
good.
it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like dominoes. When you're playing dominoes, the domino effect. One falls and then the other one falls. But we won't say this falls. These will stand up. They'll be falling and they'll all stand up.
Yeah, I also wanted to get Jemaya here, speaking about the LA crop, the crop swap,
Hmm.
that also started in West Adams. But he just became a dad, so he's been busy, and he promised me that he'll be here in next month. So
Okay.
stay
Okay.
tuned, everybody, because unfortunately I couldn't get him for Earth Month, but he's gonna tell us more, and he does also a very similar work, which is, different families have different fruits or things, and he helps swap them. So it's kind of like a cool thing to be, and especially in LA where there's like everybody's in their car,
Hmm.
or in their own home, in their own world. It's so nice to see people kind of doing this type of exchange and building community through food. This is like one of the oldest practices that we have as humans, like as people.
Hmm.
And it's nice to see that we're trying to reinvent that in a new way in an urban setting now.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, okay, I want to see if maybe I want to invite people in the public to ask any questions that you might have for Steven, or to any questions that you might have about community gardens. I saw one question about Saudi Arabia, and how they're growing alfalfa to feed cattle, and I don't know if this relates, and I want to just more relate these our questions to local issues. But one thing that I want to make sure that we talked about is that we just had abundance amount of rain in Los Angeles. This has been a very wet year, and community gardens and gardens in general could help us is capture their storm water, which we're not doing very great right now. A lot of our water ended up in the ocean with the trash. But maybe what is your take on all of these natural resources and integrating more community gardens to make sure that we utilize them as much as we can?
Okay, so the question, repeat the question.
So I'm talking about is storing water.
Yeah.
Water is a precious resource right now. Water is life. We don't have a lot of water. I know that people have this sense that, oh, it rains so much in Los Angeles, so now certainly we're not in a drought. We're still in a drought. We're still in a drought. Even though we have more water this year than most, we're still in a drought. What is your take on community gardens helping preserve those resources, like storm water capturing or other resources like heat island effect, for example? We don't talk about community gardens as a way to keep our communities cool, because they're kind of served like as trees almost.
Yeah. Well, our garden has been for several years. We have stormwater. We have a stormwater problem and some type of other runoff problem at part of our garden. So one thing that we would like to do is to try to capture some of that storm water and just recharge the groundwater. And it is unfortunate that I don't know the percent, but I'm going to say maybe 80% of the rainwater from all the watershed in Los Angeles, whether it's San Gabriel River, LA River, or Bayona Creek, goes to the ocean, as opposed to most of that water, or a big significant portion of it, recharging groundwater. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy that we have all this asphalt, all this concrete, and these channels that channel right to the Pacific Ocean. And we don't get a lot of rain here. But with stormwater certainly can be used for irrigating gardens. But I will say, for
Yes.
example, like at Ladera Park, they're capturing some stormwater. And of course, they spend a lot of money. Cities and governments always have to spend tons of money on engineers and studies and everything. So they have a system where they're capturing it, and I guess they're watering their flora at that park, similar to West Side Neighborhood Park, which is across the street from the garden. But um, stormwater definitely needs to be captured, or what have you, because it just runs to the ocean.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to get more involved in your community garden, how can they do that? How can they get in touch with you? As we are ending our live stream, can you tell us how people can get more? I'll be there tomorrow, but can you tell us more about the event tomorrow?
Oh yeah, okay. So Earth Day is going to be tomorrow at the Good Earth Community Garden. We
Good
are
Earth.
going, yeah, we will start actually doing physical work from 8 o'clock until 10. We're going to have a drip irrigation class at 9. LA Compost is going to do a workshop from 10 until 11:30. There'll be a discussion on California natives. There'll be seed giveaways. We will have a buy nothing takeaway table, where if you have something that's worthwhile, that's not junk, you can put it on the table, and hopefully someone else will get it. We'll have children's activities, art activities. We will have a few chickens there where the kids can look for bugs to feed the chickens. Let's see. Oh, I mean, there are a lot of activities. So the thing to do is go to Instagram and look up the Good Earth Community Garden. And if you want to contact us, I would go through LA Community Garden Council. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just go to 1 o'clock tomorrow. Everything will end about 1.
Okay, so tomorrow at 8 a.m., everybody's got to come with their, ready to like start digging in the
Yeah,
dirt and
that's to
stuff.
help. That is to help build our bioswale. We're just going to dig from around 8 to 10, and then from those that want to do other things, we have other workshops and talks from 9 until 1 o'clock. I'm doing another talk. Well, I'll be doing a talk at noon, and Florence Nishida, Cole Hawthorne. A lot of people are involved in doing talks.
Exciting. Well, I'm going to be there in the earlier time of the day because there's a few Earth Day events that I have to attend. Of course, it's Earth Day and it's Saturday, so everybody wants to celebrate Earth Day. But I am so grateful for your leadership and your work. I know that you wear many hats in our community, and the community garden conversation is not something that a lot of people take on. So I want to thank you so much because it's so important.
Okay.
And I hope that everybody that watched this live stream can get involved with Good Earth community garden in West Adams. You don't have to live in West Adams to come and hang in West Adams.
Nope.
You can come from everywhere.
That's right.
It will be, Steven asked me already to get a plot, but I cannot do it alone. So if you guys want to maybe join me to get a plot, maybe we can do a little community plot in Good Earth and get involved and learn more. And that way it's not so intimidating. It's not very intimidating to be part of the community garden. It's actually something very beautiful.
Yeah, and I will say LA Green Grounds, we have a teaching garden right adjacent to the Good Earth. So that's a good
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So thank you so much, Steven, for being with us today.
All right.
This was your first Instagram live, for what I understand. You survived.
Yes, I've survived. Yeah.
So big kudos to you for joining me. I know this technology can be quite overwhelming, but you did great. And again, thank you so much for all your work with the community garden.
Okay, well, we will see you tomorrow.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.
And for all of you that watched today's stream, thank you so much for joining me. Happy Earth Day and happy Earth Month. And of course, the conversation always continues online. You can always send me a message. Help us grow our community by sharing this video with other people that might be interested in learning more about community gardens and, healthy food and access to fresh food in their community. Of course, you know where to find me, and Earth Day should be every day. So thank you so much, everyone, and big hugs, and bye. Have a great, great rest of your evening.